I used to run probabilities in my head like lullabies. All the ways Dorian and I would clear intake together, mocking the risk tables, our bond secure. No sterile lights, no contract manager murmuring about reallocation. Now it's just me in this humming cabin, tasting thin, recycled air that's nothing like our balcony wine. I keep replaying his hand on my neck, his promise he'd follow. It's almost enough to believe. Almost. You can't really grasp what silence means until you step onto dust that's never known a voice. The interlock cycled behind me with a hollow thunk that seemed to echo forever. I stood there, feeling the faint rumble fade through my boots. For a second, I couldn't get my lungs to work right. My visor display bathed my face in gentle teal. Neat lines of data streaming by. Oxygen debit. External millibars. My heart rate spiking higher than the calm little icon suggested. Beyond the threshold, the moon waited. The hatch clicked open with the smallest sigh. I expected a dramatic whoosh, but the pressure gradients were managed so finely, it was almost polite. My suit flexed, micro joints shifting. I stepped forward. Gravity caught me like a hesitant lover. Too light, almost apologetic. I wobbled, overcompensated, slammed my heel down. Dust scattered outward in lazy rosettes, catching the harsh lights in tiny silver glints. It took nearly 5 seconds for the motes to settle again. Okay, I breathed, trying to steady myself. My own voice filled my helmet, small and oddly fragile. I took another careful step, and another. The plane unfolded around me, a soft quilt of rises and dips, smudged in subtle charcoal gradients. It looked almost delicate, like if I stepped wrong, the whole crust might cave in. Off to my right, auxiliary hydrodomes glowed under long pole lights. Their transparent shells seemed to catch the stars inside them. Past that, the horizon dipped away, and there was Earth. Too blue, too alive. It looked fragile from here, a painted glass ornament someone had set just out of reach. A laugh rose in my throat, broke midway, turned thin. I crouched slower this time, letting my knees bend with a hesitant bounce. My suit gave a tiny hydraulic hiss. When I pressed my gloved hand to the regolith, it parted easily, coating my fingers in soft gray film. I raised my hand, tilted it. The dust drifted off in looping strands, as if it didn't quite believe in gravity either. Each mote seemed to glow with its own tiny secret. I thought of Dorian tracing little constellations on my skin back home, whispering stories of the futures we build. This was supposed to be the first brushstroke of that masterpiece. Instead, standing there with lunar dirt slipping through my fingers, I felt this terrible, beautiful loneliness open in my chest. "I'll find us something perfect," I whispered, my voice ghosted inside the helmet. It fogged briefly, then cleared. My eyes were too wide, pupils swallowing the iris like a prey animal caught in a distant beam. The ground crunched softly when I shifted my weight. Even the sounds here felt wrong, as if wrapped in thick cloth. A faint tremor went through me, a delayed shock that I was really here, that my bones were hundreds of thousands of kilometers from home, wrapped in composite weave and air pumps, that every step would take me deeper into a place that had never known rain, never soaked in laughter, never felt the press of barefoot children running under an open sun, and that I was alone. I tried not to dwell on the fact that next shuttle might mean cycles of rehab for Dorian, or worse, a lifetime of earthbound monitoring. That thought was slippery and mean, so I catalogued it quickly away, saved for some future inventory of darker probabilities. For now, I simply stood with my boots sunk an inch into ancient dust, trying to memorize the feeling of my first breathless steps on the moon. I stayed there until the chill began to bite through my suit, then turned toward the nearest hatch, letting the slight overpressure pull me forward. The seals sighed as they cycled. Just like that, the emptiness was behind me. Inside, the air was warmer, tinged with something halfway between machine oil and wet leaves. My boots squeaked on the polymer walkway as I moved past lockers and crates. Ahead, the corridor split into a wide hall, strung with low flex lights. Someone had painted crude flowers up one curve of the wall in bright mineral reds and oranges. It should have looked childish. Instead, it made my throat tighten, a fragile defiance that proved someone had tried to make this harsh place soft. Small hydro tanks lined the right-hand wall, bubbling faintly. LED bands cast uneasy ripples. Inside, stringy green algae twisted like lazy ghosts. The pumps exhaled with quiet regularity, as if the whole dome was breathing through cheap lungs. It struck me how precarious it all was. One bad seal or missed calibration, and this little oasis would fail. The thought made me hug my elbows, stepping carefully. A worker in a navy jumpsuit sat cross-legged by a rack of parcels, laughing at something on her slate. Her hair floated slightly in the partial gravity, drifting around her shoulders in a careless halo. It was oddly beautiful, that bit of human mess in a place built to be sterile. I almost let myself picture Dorian beside me, smirking at the algae tanks, murmuring some joke about swamp decor. The thought hurt in a way that wasn't sharp yet, just sore, like pressing on a bruise. I tried to focus on details instead. Speaker static overhead, metal seams catching uneven light, tiny proofs I was here first, before this world was smoothed into something that corporations could flaunt on recruitment feeds. My tablet chimed. Settlement orientation scheduled for 0700. After all the suits and contracts and clause of amortization, it was almost funny how it all came down to a cheap, standard orientation block. My mouth twisted. I let out half a laugh that never quite made it out. I kept walking past tool racks and idle loader bots. A faint buzz of conversation pulled me into the colony's cramped communal heart. The mess hall was long and narrow, walled in by dusty flex panels. Fold-out tables didn't match. Hand-painted flags and paper lanterns fluttered from overhead conduits, stirring whenever the vents kicked on. It smelled of warmed nutrient paste and something sharper, like bleach. A few settlers hunched over trays, eyes tired but alert, watching newcomers with the curiosity of people starved for novelty. A young man waved me over. New drop, right? Come on, don't just hover. Food's crap either way, might as well have crap with company. A startled laugh escaped me. I slid into the seat he kicked out. Elara? I said. My voice was thinner than I liked. Vic, he grinned, showing a chipped canine. Been stuck here 8 cycles. You'll learn to love the boredom. Means nothing's leaking. Nearby, an older woman stirred her paste, wrist pad dark and cracked. She seemed both fully here and heartbreakingly far away. Vic caught me glancing, dropped his voice. Don't mind Neela. Hydro fled year before I landed. Lost all her personal kit, family logs, everything. Never synced backups. She's half ghost now, if you ask me. I pressed my palm flat to the table, grounding myself in the low vibration of air pumps underfoot. Does it ever get easier? Not the tech, the quiet. Vic tilted his head. It does, or you get smaller. Either way, the pressure stops hurting. Then he shook it off, forced a grin. So who's waiting for you back home or on the next shuttle? Everyone comes here chasing something. My husband. My throat tightened. He's supposed to be on a later flight. Just a small hold for medical monitoring. Ah, Vic said, drawing it out with a little click. Gives you time to pick the perfect rock to build on. We're better neighbors. He nudged my shoulder. We traded harmless complaints about synthetic garlic and weird cautionary vids on waste etiquette. I laughed more than I expected. Then my wrist pad lit up with the daily amortization ping. Just a faint green flash, a quiet tick of fresh debt tightening around my life. My smile cracked. Vic watched, not prying, just cataloging, then dipped his head, like he'd filed me neatly into his private ledger of new arrivals. Right there in that too-warm cafeteria with its rust-tinged air, I promised nobody here would see me crack first. Later, I found a narrow comm booth with a door stuck on warped hinges. Inside, the console was scratched from old rings and frantic fingernails. I settled in, tried to breathe slow. The screen flickered. Warmed with the familiar handshake, my thumb hovered over the live connect key. I almost pressed it, but some desperate fear of sounding too hollow or hungry stopped me cold. So I picked the safer route, hit record. When his face bloomed in the window, just a still from our last call, I smiled so wide it hurt. "Hey, love," I began, voice too bright, almost scolding. "You were right about Crescent Ridge. Cold and clear. Feels like living inside a pearl. All these soft grays and sudden bright scratches of metal. You'd love the way the light comes up, like it's embarrassed to be seen." I laughed, thin, fragile. I found this overlook past the Hydra dock, stood there 10 minutes easy, just watching regolith drift like cigarette ash. "I can't wait for you to ruin it. Crush the first little marks I made with those big, stupid boots." I paused, throat closing, leaned in like it was a sin. "Come soon, please. Before this starts feeling like only mine." I sent it before I could claw it back. The console blinked, word, done. On the way back, 2 maintenance workers were hunched by an open conduit. "They dropped the second wave of cutbacks on Group 4, one muttered. "Standard variance, my ass," the other rasped. They knew exactly what these contracts meant. She laughed, brittle, like tearing paper. "Not like anyone's breaking lease to hop back to Earth. Debt carriers would feast." I kept walking, faster. Their voices faded, but the icy prickle crawled right under my collar. When I reached my quarters, I sank onto the bunk. It creaked, strangely human, in this place of tight seals and silent pumps. I didn't cry. Not yet. I smoothed the fabric, counting tiny flaws, cataloging them. Someday he would be here to tease me for tracking lunar wrinkles like they were precious. That night, I curled with my wrist pad propped against my knees, replaying an old clip of Dorian balancing jackets in our apartment, laughing. "Babe, you're not taking 3 identical gray coats to the moon. Gonna look like a dusty librarian before you even hit your first survey." My echo of that laugh was pale. Outside, Crescent Ridge lay quiet. The plain stretched under cold spotlights. Above, Earth hung like a frost-bitten coin. I drew the wrist pad to my chest, whispered into the stale dark, "He'll be here. Any day now." But the words sank, heavy and unanswered. When sleep finally found me, I dreamed his hands warm on my face, telling me I was brilliant, irreplaceable, the luckiest find he had ever made. And when I woke hours later, my cheek pressed to the dark screen. My breath left a small fog that faded quickly. Tomorrow, I'd scout the crater belt, mark a spot so perfect, he'd claim it was his idea. It was still so dangerously easy to believe he'd step off the next shuttle, grin, call me his brilliant girl, and pretend none of this had ever been in doubt.